The learning process. 8. Tools for Phase 4, sharing, communicating and ownership. Remember that in Phase 4, the communications materials are produced and the mechanisms and channels to reach the audiences, internal and external, prioritised during the framing phase are prepared. Communications materials. Sharing the results of the learning process is a key step in bringing the learning cycle to a close. The results for sharing lessons learned, reflections and recommendations resulting from the learning process are diverse. For example, to inspire others, to make the experience visible among current or potential donors, to strengthen the learning culture among participating organisations, to provide input for decision-making on a given process, and to provide input for an evaluation, among others. The communication of results must have a clearly defined objective from the outset, as well as predefined target audiences. This will determine the channels that must be used to reach the audiences and achieve what is desired through dissemination. When we talk about communications materials, we are not necessarily referring to publications or videos whose budgets are often beyond the reach of the learning process or that are created but not used for the expected purposes. Sometimes all that is required is to prepare a few slides, a short text or a graph. Additionally, ownership is especially important for the learning process. It entails building knowledge by incorporating lessons learnt and recommendations in planning, monitoring, evaluation and implementation processes, depending on the scope and level of the learning process. Knowledge building can occur in any of the 3 levels of institutional learning. Improving the practice, improving the goals and objectives, or rethinking the institutional mission. Not all audiences with whom we share the results of the learning process are of interest for the lessons learned ownership process. For those audiences with whom we are interested in moving towards the generation development of knowledge based on the lessons learned, recommendations and reflections, we have designed a roadmap that enables this journey, which we have called the Roadmap for Validation and Ownership of Lessons Learnt. This roadmap begins with a selection of some of the lessons learnt gathered previously. 4 or 5 will be enough. For the exercise to work, it is crucial that these lessons learnt all correspond to the same topic. For example, lessons learnt related to administrative matters or policy advocacy issues. Once lessons learnt have been selected, a collective group exercise is convened. The participants in an ownership workshop must have 3 hours available and have specific interest in the topic that the lessons learnt relate to. The workshop begins with understanding and validating the meaning and context that gave rise to each lesson learnt. Then the participants determine if any of those lessons learnt are useful in the short term, and they finish by incorporating the lesson into some action or strategy in their own work plan. The ownership of lessons learnt through their inclusion in institutional work is the ideal conclusion for the learning process. However, it is the step that deserves the most attention because, despite its apparent simplicity, it has turned out to be one of the greatest challenges in the learning process. In the following video, we will present a tool for technical teams to design their own simple communications strategy that will allow them not only to share the results of their learning process, but also to improve their levels of technical or political advocacy with specific audiences.